Hello, Mike McGraw here with another edition of the Better Than I Found It podcast. My special guest today is former Oklahoma State golfer and two-time PGA Tour winner Viktor Hovland, who's really been playing some pretty amazing golf recently. Viktor's truly one of the good guys, in my opinion, always has a smile on his face, and is really a refreshing addition to the PGA Tour. In the interview, he describes his recent win at Mayakoba and also talks about his love of swing technique, his views on country music, among other subjects. My assistant Mikkel is in on the interview, so I'm outnumbered today, 2 Norwegians to 1 American. I think you'll enjoy the podcast, so let's get right to the interview with Viktor. Okay, I'd like to welcome Viktor Hovland to the Better Than I Found It podcast. Thank you for coming on to the podcast today, Viktor.
Thanks, Coach. It's a pleasure to be on. You've already had the opportunity to have a lot of cool guests on, so I'm proud to be on here.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah, you're certainly continuing that tradition. It's great to have you. But you're the first guest that I've had that's in quarantine, so you're breaking ground right here.
Yeah, I figured it's a good time to talk on the podcast and keep my mind busy. That's 10 days. That's a long time to sit around and do nothing.
Yeah, so you're in Norway just hanging out at the house.
Yep.
Well, great. Well, you've played really, really well recently, and I know you played well in Dubai last week, but I want to talk about, if you could, a little bit about the Mayakoba win. That was an amazing week. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's one of, I would say, probably the only course I kind of feel like a veteran on, because I happened to play the World Amateur Team Championships there in 2016 maybe, and I had some good rounds there, and I think Norway had the best showing in that tournament ever, tied for 5th, I believe. So I have some good memories from there. And I actually played my first PGA Tour event as an amateur at Mayakoba. I missed a cut by shot, but really loved the place, and course fits me pretty well, I think. I come back the next year, first time as a pro. I missed a cut again by a shot, and this year I had an appetite for revenge, and I felt like I was playing well. I made some really good changes, and just kind of stuck to the game plan. And pretty much the first 36 holes, I didn't really make that many putts. And I told my caddy Shay, I was like, man, I'm hitting it really good. I just wish I could, have one of these weeks where I'm putting the putting and the long game together, and I'd be in contention, fighting for a win. And, I think at the time, after 36 holes, Emiliano had really played well, and I was maybe 7 shots behind, which is a lot on a golf course like that, because everyone's making birdies, and it's hard to out birdie people when you get to courses like that. But kind of just stuck to the game plan again. And over the weekend, I happened to put the long game together with the putter kind of coming alive, and started making some birdies.
Well, it's great when the putter comes alive for anybody, but it's awfully fun. But the golf course itself lends itself toward a guy who can drive the ball too. If you drive the ball crooked, that's kind of a rough place to be, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't. If you don't know where the driver's going, you can basically pack your bags, because you can hit irons off a lot of those tees, but the course was playing so wet that actually, even though it's short, it helps to be able to hit the driver. You just get such a big advantage. Yeah, if you don't know where it's going, you're going to have a hard time out there.
Well, it was great to see the win, and certainly the birdie on the last hole was exciting. And we were watching, and my wife doesn't watch a lot of golf, but she does watch you. I will tell you that. And she watches Kyle Jones. He's a Baylor Bear. She watches some other former OSU golfers, but she's really excited when you're in contention. I guess she's thinking you're going to be the next big thing. So, but she was watching as well.
Well, thank you. Tell her I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And the one thing that you missed about me not coaching you was not my coaching at Oklahoma State. It was Pam's food. She's a great cook. So
Okay.
sorry
What
you
does she
missed out on
cook?
that. What?
What's her specialty?
All of it. She does
All
really
of
well
it?
with Mikkel. You've eaten her meals.
Yeah, they're great. Pam, I miss your cooking. So uh, to take a step back here, I need to sneak some questions in because I ditto so much what you're saying, Coach. We're huge fans, and my family as well. Just told you, Victor. My wife usually yells from wherever she is in the house, "How's Victor doing?" And obviously, that's has a lot to do with me being Norwegian. And it's actually kind of funny, Coach. You're on a Zoom call with two people in Norway right now.
Yeah,
Those odds were kind of low right there.
very low. I think the odds of two Norwegians being on a Zoom call in the wind, I don't know how it happens.
No, it's a strange world. But Victor, I have a question for you. So you win at Mayakoba, and we're all watching all across the country right here. I was in quarantine at the time then. Um, but that interview after you won was so cool, I thought, because you were super transparent about how you felt down the stretch. Will you kind of elaborate a little bit on those feelings coming down the stretch to get your second win on tour?
Yeah. Obviously, I knew after the start I played well on the front nine that I was leading by one or two shots. And as we made the turn on the back nine, we didn't have any leaderboards at first. I think 4 holes or even 5 holes. And I made a bogey on the 12th hole, and I knew that was going to set me back a little bit, but I didn't know how the other people were doing. But I knew I was okay. This is probably going to be a pretty close race. I can't just, I made 4 birdies, I think, the first 7 holes on the front nine. It's not like I can just par in coming in from there. I have to, you know, take charge and continue to make birdies. And it's hard when you're in a spot, you're in the lead, but you kind of have to keep going. And I don't know, I was just really nervous because I knew what it meant to me, and I've worked really hard for it. So obviously there's a lot of pressure there, but knowing then again that there are guys behind you, they're going to catch up to you. It's just a matter of when. And I have to pick up some more birdies. And you can hit a lot of good shots, you can hit perfect putts, but they're just not going to go in every time. So it was like, I know I'm playing good enough to where it could happen, but I was very just anxious about it to, okay, man, I hope it's going to happen. So it's a lot of where, you're
Yeah.
trying to execute the shots that you have, but you just don't know if it's going to go your way or not. And I guess that's kind of just, the excitement and the nerves that are just kind of overwhelming you a little bit.
Well, I applaud you because you're always being just authentic to who you are. You're just Victor, and you're so open about like how you feel down the stretch. And you were saying you were shaking, you were nervous, and I mean we all have felt that at times on the golf course that play competitive golf. And I just think it's so healthy for you to share that, for young players to hear that that's okay, and that happens in competitive golf, and you got to find ways to live with it. Because the more common thing would be to say, yeah, I just focused on what I could control. And but I just find it so refreshing that you're open and transparent, and I think that's why a lot of people really root for you, and find that you're a really authentic guy.
Yeah, I don't know why. Because obviously the people that are on top of the leaderboard trying to finish out a tournament, they're in that same position. But I don't know, it just doesn't seem to face them. But I'm sure we all kind of feel the same in that moment. Some people might handle it better or worse, but yeah, I just it was just what I felt really uncomfortable. Yeah, but that's just kind of what stood out to me. Now, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if I'm making a quick segment here, but last week in Dubai, I also kind of had a chance to win the tournament. I ended up losing by a couple of shots, but I was never leading the tournament, and I was never, you know, quite that close. And in that situation, I felt very, very calm. Like I was hardly nervous at all. So there is something to that too. Like I don't know if it's just a setting or if it was because I was actually leading the tournament in Mexico and being kind of chased by the guys behind me. And in Dubai, I was one of those guys kind of chasing the leader. So I think that situation also matters too. I just think that's interesting. I haven't been in that situation a whole lot. So for me, it's kind of a learning experience too.
Well, something tells me you're going to be in those situations a lot going forward. And
hopefully.
Yeah, that's what everybody hopes for, and that's why you work. But I'm going to say this, Mikkel, that was a really good point you brought up about the interview, because it's great to be vulnerable like that. I think that's strong. There's a sign of strength, actually. But one of the things I noticed, I saw a clip or heard a clip of the Norwegian sportscasters calling that putt you made on the 18th hole. I have never heard two sportscasters more excited for a human being ever than they were for you. Have you talked to either one of those guys in an interview yet?
So I've talked to one of those guys just briefly on messages. But it's funny because I grew up obviously in Norway watching a lot of golf on TV. And one of the guys there, he has been around commentating for a long time, and he used to play the European Tour for a little bit. And the second guy that I talked to a little bit, when I was 13 years old, he just quit playing on the PGA Tour, and he took over kind of one of the junior elite groups. He was kind of the coach for a group that I was a part of, and I was kind of starstruck because here we have the only Norwegian golfer to play the PGA Tour at the time, kind of being the observer or chaperone, whatever you want to call it, for kind of our group. And then fast forward a few years later, he's commenting, my first and second win on tour. I think that was pretty cool, and obviously the emotions there, very genuine, and it's cool to listen to.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and the impact you're making in Norway in just a little bit. But I did want to mention that I've never seen a call like that in my entire life, and I've watched a lot of golf. But it was very, very refreshing to see. So let's back up a little bit. How did you get into the game? You're a kid from Norway. I mean, who were your early influences? Mikkel will tell you it's not normal for a kid. Usually they're cross-country skiing or doing something, ice hockey, something. How'd you get started in the game?
So my dad actually worked in Kansas City, Missouri. And he was there for about a year and had to drive past the driving range on his way to work every day. And he got pretty curious, picked up the game there, started hitting some shots. And when he flew back home to Norway, he bought a set of golf clubs. And that's kind of how I got started, just hitting a couple shots. I happen to live really close to just a massive field. There's something called the Norway Cup, which is like a huge soccer event that happens in Norway. And there's a bunch of teams from, a bunch of different countries, from Africa and all over in Europe that comes over to play. And I would just go out there and beat some balls. But at the time I was obviously really young and didn't take it very seriously. And when I was in first grade, about 7 or 8 years old, I started doing Taekwondo, so martial arts. And I also played soccer for numerous years. But when I was about 11 or 12 years old, that's when I told my mom and dad that, okay, I kind of want to hit balls indoors now during the winter time, because it gets really cold and you can't play golf outside. And that's kind of when I wanted to play golf all year round.
That's great. Kind of an unusual way your dad came to the game and then he brought it to you.
Yeah, pretty much.
But where they play the Norway Cup, Victor, isn't that more like a swimming pool rather than a big grass field? Because I played the Norway Cup a couple years, and it never stopped pouring when I played Norway.
No.
I have terrible memories.
Just mud fields everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely
I can only imagine. I quit soccer the year before we were like old enough to play the Norway Cup, so I never got to.
Gotcha.
It sounds like you stayed dry because you quit soccer.
I did.
Well, listen, looking back on that and just what we know from your personality, just watching, and I've talked to Alan Bratton a lot about you, and you and I have met each other on several occasions, but I've always said in my coaching career that enthusiasm is like a 15th club in the golf bag. And it's like really important to have a love for what you're doing and have fun with what. Are you really having as much fun as we think you're having? And if so, why is golf so fun to you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm having a lot of fun, but it's funny too because I think the cameras are pointing at me at convenient times, where I'm obviously smiling and hit a good shot or I'm having a good time, but I also have to say, not necessarily in tournaments, because in tournaments I try to do a good job of kind of stay more even-minded and not react too much to what's going on, just kind of go through the process and whatever happens happens. But I'm very much of a perfectionist because I not really at any other part of my life, but because I take golf so seriously and I love it, I have a very high standard. So when I don't perform to that standard, when I'm just practicing, I can get very, very mad. And it doesn't happen all the time, but certainly the guys at Oklahoma State and the people that know me the best, they know I can get pretty heated if I'm not hitting it the way I want to, or if something's bothering me on the course.
But you definitely have a fair bit of enthusiasm too, Victor. You probably don't remember this, but when you first probably were starting to practice seriously, I remember I was probably right at the age where I went to college, so maybe 17, 18, 19. Somewhere in there, you started showing up at Fornebu Indoor Golf
Yeah.
Center, just down the street from where I am right now. And I remember there was this big putting course for all the local Norwegian people. We used to call it Lunden after a guy that made the course, and you would putt against your friends. And I still have a clear memory of this guy like walking around just fist pumping and smiling, laughing, having serious contests with his friends. And we were thinking like, who's this guy? Because we all knew each other at that point, but you were kind of you had your enthusiasm back then as well.
Yeah, who's this annoying kid fist pumping everywhere?
Yeah, I try to kind of avoid saying it that way, but yeah, that's what we thought.
Were you just an annoying little kid? Is that what you were?
I'm sure I were. I really
No,
don't know, but I'm sure I was.
no, I'm just kidding. But I do remember that. That is true. That is my first memory until about, maybe 4 years later or something, when I was going into my senior year and you kicked our butts in the Norwegian Championship right before my senior year summer. That might have been my junior year. But anyways, I might have shot about 3 under for the week and finished like 18th in the Norwegian Championship. And Viktor Hovland, a 16-year-old kid, won by, I can't even remember how many anymore, but I want to say you were like 25 under par or something.
Yeah, 26 under par, and I was 5 ahead of Christian Johannesson. So
Yeah, he's on the European Tour right now. I do remember that. So that was my first inkling of like, oh, maybe I'm not quite good enough at this. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you should say that because you're talking about his junior career, and now you're no longer a junior. You're an established PGA Tour player. But do you have any advice for young kids coming up? We have a lot of young listeners that listen to our podcast, and I mean, just what's the best piece of advice you'd give to a young kid coming up in the game?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say one thing because I feel like we're all in different situations and things might not apply to everyone. But I feel like one thing that I can just kind of speak for myself would really help me is that I had the perception that I had to just get like just a lot better overnight. Just thinking, oh, I'm a junior player. I'm starting Oklahoma State next year, let's say it was, and I just felt like, oh man, I got to be so much better than I am now to perform well on the team. And then when I get to Oklahoma State, obviously you're preparing to turn professional and you're thinking, oh man, I just got to get so much better to turn professional. And then I'm going to compete against, the best in the world. But it's hard to look at, especially if you're 14, 15, 16, however old you are, and kind of look at it as a long game instead of trying to just get so much better overnight. Just kind of look at it as a process and think, okay, well, doesn't mean that you can't think of getting better, but just realize that, okay, if I do this every day, that's going to help my long game, or this is going to help my short game, and just continue to establish those good routines and just chip at it. Show up every day, do your best, and just get a little bit better every single day. And over time, you've gotten a lot better if you do that.
Very good advice. Very good.
Victor, can you talk a little bit specifics, like for listeners that might be in cold climates like you and I grew up in, up north in the States or Canada, or up north here in Europe somewhere? What did that kind of development look like for you? How did you spend the winters, and then what did you do when we could get outside in the summers? And is there anything you would change about that if you could go back now?
Yeah, obviously the summer months and when we were able to hit balls outside and play golf, that was a lot of fun, and we would take advantage of that. I remember I would play a lot of golf, and I had some good routines in where after school I would go to the course, and it'd be really late because in Norway in the summer it stays light for a long time. And I remember just, instead of going to the driving range, let's say I only had 2-3 hours to practice, I would always go to the course and bring 4 or 5 balls, find some cool shots, and just experiment. Play the holes 4 or 5 different ways, and just play golf. Because when the winter comes and you can't do that anymore, you have a lot of time to spend on the driving range. That's about all you can do in the winter months, especially here. You probably have 4.5 months to tinker on your swing and kind of get those reps in. So I really try to put a lot of focus on technique stuff, and just kind of ingraining a repeatable motion, essentially, when I was indoors. Just putting in a lot of reps and working on the things I felt like I need to work on in my swing.
Well, that really leads into my next question. I mean, you appear to be a pretty technical golfer. You do a lot of technique work, and a lot of people, that doesn't work for a lot of people. It definitely works for you. But I want to know, and I want you to tell our listeners, how do you take working on technique? How do you take it to the golf course, and what do you leave on the range, and what do you take to the golf? I mean, how do you work at technique?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in golf swing and mechanics, and I've always wanted to ask questions and figure out why I do what I do, and what happens if I slice this, what is it that I do that causes it, to kind of become self-sufficient in that way. And I've had some great teachers along kind of my junior years that help me do that. They would ask me questions to, okay, why do you think you hit that shot? Instead of just kind of giving me the answers and just telling me, oh, well, in the backswing, the club's got to look here and it's going to look here. I remember I would always, I did spend a lot of time trying to chase positions because I felt like at the time that would help me. And I would spend a lot of time doing that in the winter time. But whenever I would get to the golf course, it was all kind of about shot shaping to me. So I felt like I was really good at spending time on my golf swing when I was at the driving range. I would do a lot of drills, slow motion stuff, mirror work to kind of implement that as well as I could. But when it was time to play golf, I kind of set that aside and focused on the result. And, that's kind of a process going back and forth a little bit, but over time, again, that's gonna, be put into place.
Great.
Can you tell us just quickly through some of those teachers? Was it Magnus Olsson you worked with for a while here in Norway?
Yeah.
And then what you did in college as well, because I think that's kind of an interesting story.
Yeah. So I had a few guys growing up. There's one guy called Bent Broughton. That was at Grønmo Golf Club, and I was with him for about a year, and then I was with Magnus Olsson for probably 3 years, and then I happened to switch golf clubs, and I worked with a couple of guys there, Jim McGowan and Jürgen Hilos, at the time when I was at Drøbak. And at that point, it was time to kind of get ready for going over to college. And I actually, I think 6 months before going to college, as I said, I was really into kind of golf swing stuff, and I was doing a whole lot of reading and watching videos on YouTube. And there's this one guy that really picked my interest. His name was Kelvin Miyahira, and he's a swing coach from Hawaii, and he had a lot of really cool and interesting stuff online. And his videos are still up on there if you want to check it out. And he wrote a lot of articles on his website that he used terms that he explained the golf swing in a way that I'd never heard it before. And I was like, man, this sounds really good. So I sent him a bunch of videos, and kind of leading up to starting college, I was essentially just, he was my golf coach at the time. I would just send him swing videos. He would send a video talking about it, and I would work on a couple things. And about a year later, unfortunately, he had a stroke, and he's still recovering from that. And that's kind of when I transitioned into his right-hand man. Denny Lucas is his name, and I was with him for pretty much all of my time in college. And yeah, we did a lot of good stuff together. And recently, I kind of wanted to hear some other opinions a little bit. And I bounced around a lot. I saw a lot of different coaches, and recently settled with Jeff Smith in Las Vegas, which, I think he's really smart.
Cool.
You talk about technique. A lot of people can handle technique, and you obviously can. And Charles Howell is a perfect example of someone who's worked on technique his entire career, and he's never hit it bad. So it's a special way you do that. I think it's great, and what you're doing is working.
Yeah, I think it's like people think of technique as being a bad thing. It kind of has the stigma around it. Oh, you're working on technique, you must be swinging it really bad. But it's not a bad thing if you're working on the right things. Eventually it's gonna help you out. And obviously, everyone thinks they're working on good technique when they're doing it, or else they wouldn't be doing it. But that's why I think it was so important for me to do the research and kind of figure out for myself. Okay, I would see all these different coaches. They would tell me something, and I would have a very open mind to it. But at the same time, I'm very stubborn. I'm very protective of my own golf swing. I would listen to it. I would try to understand it. I would test it out myself, and then I would go, okay, it doesn't make sense because of this, or this, or I would say, oh, this actually works. I think I'm going to keep sticking to this. And I think that's where, Charles is obviously a very smart guy, and he knows the golf swing very well. So he can quickly figure out if someone gives him advice, he can kind of, sort it out whether it's good advice or bad advice. And I think that's very important with technique stuff.
That's really interesting on your process as far as like instructors and technical stuff, Viktor. I'm wondering, what about statistics and how you handle that? I think pulled it up here earlier. In 2020, I think you were 18th in strokes gained off the tee and 7th into the green. And then you obviously have continued that strength this year. That's obviously a strength of yours, ball striking. I'm wondering, are you working with anybody to dissect those numbers? I know a lot of guys on tour do that. And what does that look like for you? And is like Jeff Smith that you're working with now, is he involved in that in any capacity?
So I know there's a lot of guys on tour that have a stats guy that go through their stats and help them out, which I think is very, very valuable. So my roommate, Zach Boshu, he also played at Oklahoma State, and he's become very good friends with Scott Fawcett, who I actually did a podcast with last night. So Boshu talks to me about, course management and stats a lot. We just like to talk about it because he plays those APT events right now, the Adams Tour events, and they play on some janky golf courses, and it's not always clear what the right play is. So we like to discuss kind of how to play certain courses. And a lot of the guys he plays with, they'll hit irons off of tee shots where if you go to Google Maps, it's clear that it's a driver every time, even though you're probably going to miss the fairway, but it's a lot better being 60 yards further up from the rough than being, 60 yards further back in the fairway. And just, it's become pretty clear that hitting the ball further is a huge advantage. Bryson's showing that, and I think a lot of other guys are trying to kind of increase that ceiling, the potential of club head speed, so they can play at a little faster speed than what they normally do. So, and obviously Jeff Smith is very up to date with that stuff, and that's why we have been, for example, trying to increase more club head speed and trying to kind of, in my case, take care of the short game and putting, which I feel like I've gotten already a lot better at.
What is your club head speed with the driver right now? Just cruise, normal.
I'd say around 115 miles an hour. It used to be 112. Mm-hmm. Not too long ago, I remember I was at the PGA Championship earlier this year, and I was not hitting the ball very well, and I was hitting the ball like not very fast, and it was very inefficient, probably swinging around 166, 67 miles an hour ball speed. Now it was also cold in San Francisco, so that didn't help. But now I also increased my driver shaft by an inch, so from 44 3/4 of an inch to 45 3/4 of an inch, and as well as doing some kind of tempo stuff and just speed work in general. I've probably gained 5 miles an hour ball speed on average. I'm hovering around 172, 173 right now, so which is very good for me because I already hit it pretty straight, and I'm still able to maintain that accuracy with the increased ball speed.
And you gained, I think last year you gained on average about half a stroke around off the tee. And that's obviously because you hit it straight and you have decent distance, but you also hit driver a lot.
Yes.
Can you talk about that just for a second? Like what do you think in a practice round, not at Mayakoba where you played a bunch of times, but let's say a course you haven't seen before? What's kind of your go-to process when you get to the tee box of a new hole?
Yeah, if I'm playing a practice round, I hit driver on every single hole.
Yeah.
It might not be the play, but at least, you can always scale it back if you think it's a mistake. And especially for me, certainly before when I kind of went from being a guy that was maybe slightly short of average off the tee to now I feel like I'm maybe slightly above or certainly around the average. So now it gets a little different. I have to kind of get used to my length and kind of my strategy off the tee now. But certainly if you're around average off the tee or a little shorter, in order to kind of eliminate the leak that you already have, you have to pull driver more than other guys do, unless you're really crooked. So obviously, the shorter you hit it, your dispersion pattern is going to be a lot smaller than guys with, let's say, a 185 club at speed or ball speed. So you have to kind of squeeze it into tight corners and push those edges a little bit. But that is one of my strengths. I can hit my driver very straight, and I like to take advantage of that.
Viktor, I want to circle back a little bit to what we were talking about with Norway and Norwegian golf. As Coach was talking about the two commentators, the media in Norway and the publicity that you've gotten in Norway, the positive effect you've had on golf here, it's just so cool for me to see as a countryman. And I think this summer we passed 100,000 members again, which is the first time in many years for there to be that many players here. People are locked in watching you Sunday night win at Mykoba, the next week in Dubai. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and how much you pay attention to what media and people back in Norway kind of pay attention to you?
Yeah, it's obviously it's very cool to see, but I have, not everyone knows, but I have a house in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I've been in the United States for pretty much 4 years now, and it's almost like I'm going through an identity crisis a little bit, because I don't feel like I'm American. I'm definitely not an Oklahoman. But when I go back home, I haven't been, this is my first time being home in a year. Last time I was home was last year for Christmas. And when I come home and I talk to my buddies and, just kind of look around, I just realize how non-Norwegian I am anymore, like how much I've changed. I feel very much American when I come back. So that kind of goes hand in hand with how much I pay attention to kind of Norwegian media. I don't really, I'm really proud of kind of the Norwegian traditions and culture that we have. But I personally, like, one of my personal traits is that I kind of adapt to my environment very quickly. And one way I do that is just kind of to not forget about where I came from, but you become so focused in where you are right now, and you're trying to fit in and figure out how to kind of live in the area that you're in. That it's hard to think about going to your phone and plugging in the famous newspapers in Norway and see what's going on. I'm very much invested in what's going on in Oklahoma, and what new recruits we're going to get on the team for Oklahoma State next year, and who's winning this college event and that stuff. But obviously I've gotten a lot of just great messages from random people that I've never met before saying, "Oh, I watched you play during the summer and I just started picking up golf and I love it now. And just play well this week or have a good, rest of the year or whatever it is." It's pretty encouraging to see those messages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, you're too humble to say this, but there is a true Viktor Hovland effect going on. And a couple things played into that, the COVID pandemic where everything shut down, but the golf courses, and so there were more members and stuff. But it's just so cool for me to see that golf is on TV on the weekends. And it hasn't been that way since Suzanne Pettersson was at her top, a few years ago and whatnot. And that's just so cool to see, because for all of us that love golf, we'd love for more young players to get into the game. And you have just a huge impact on that. And we're just huge fans of you because of that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, I think looking back, I'm not Norwegian, obviously, but I can look at this situation and think probably in 15 years, we'll look back on this time when you were emerging on the PGA Tour and starting to win. And you'll see the results of the impact you're making right now. You'll see more results at that time. But, we don't want to think into the future too much. You can't look in the past too often. Like you said, I'm living right here, right now. And you say you're kind of an Oklahoman, but I've got a couple of questions in a speed round here in a minute for you that'll find out if you're really Oklahoman or not.
Oh, boy.
But in fact, we're going to do that before we let you go. We do appreciate you very much coming on the podcast today. I know that you're in quarantine, but you've had a lot going. You've got a lot of people pulling you a lot of directions. But Mikkel and I just want to wish you continued success in 2021 and beyond. And just thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, likewise.
Okay, Mikkel, are you ready for the speed round?
I'm ready. The question is if Viktor is ready for this.
I don't know. He might be.
We'll see. I'll probably get embarrassed, but it's all right.
All right. Well, here you go. I'm going to ask one, then Mikkel will ask one, then I'll ask one. We'll go back and forth. All right. Your favorite artist, is it George Strait or Luke Bryan?
Oh, boy. Freaking hate country.
Okay. All right. Well, that leads to Mikkel's first question. So you don't have to answer that one. Go ahead.
Okay, I know you're a death metal. I don't know which kind of metal you're into, but I think it's kind of death metal. So my first speed round question is, what's your favorite death metal Christmas song, if there is such a thing?
Christmas song. I'm sure there's some like parodies or like cover songs of famous Christmas songs that just turn into screamo and just full on just riffage going on. But that's not really, it's kind of, that's a little contradictory, because most of death metal is kind of depressing and has like a dark mood to it. So
there's no song called like I Hate Christmas or something?
There might be. I might do some research on that after.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before I go to my second question, you can't really be an Oklahoman until you learn to like a little bit of country music. And George Strait is the correct answer. They're not Luke Bryan. All right.
I have been now the little country that I do like, it's kind of meshed in with a little bit of kind of rock, and I feel like Jason Aldean has a couple of hits that I kind of like, and I believe Brantley Gilbert is the other guy that I kind of enjoy a little bit.
All right.
You're not going to like that, Coach.
No, I'm not. Anyway. Okay, if you had said Garth Brooks, I could at least understand Garth Brooks. He's from Stillwater, for Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, your favorite movie.
We digress.
We do.
I've so a lot of my buddies kind of when I was in elementary school, we were all just big fanboys of the Lord of the Rings movie, and every time we get together, we all watch we just have like a Lord of the Rings marathon. It's super nerdy, but it's just so nostalgic for us. So I'd have to say those, but kind of in recent memory, I've probably seen Interstellar, the movie, probably 10 times. Okay. I think it's really good. I really like the kind of the plots and movies that are original and you have to think.
All right, Mikkel, your next question.
Next question. Since you're in Norway for Christmas, all Norwegian families are between these two things for Christmas dinner. One is pretty much sheep or lamb, and the other one is pork, and it's pinnekjøtt or ribbe for Christmas.
Yeah, it's pinnekjøtt all the way.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a West Coast thing.
It is. So my dad's side of the family, they're from a little town kind of northwest of Oslo. I think there's only like 700 people in this little town. So they have a good tradition of eating pinnekjøtt, and we also include lutefisk, which I'm sure you guys have maybe heard of, fermented cod, I believe it is.
Yeah, horrible stuff.
Which doesn't sound great, but you put enough bacon, butter, and salt and pepper on there, and mix it with mashed potatoes and other yumminess. It actually is doable.
All right, that was all Greek to me there, boys. I didn't understand the word. Tournament you'd most like to win, Victor?
It's funny. I always say the British Open. The British Open at St. Andrews would be the pinnacle. But again, like I just coming over here and I have not yet played a British Open. I've had a lot of chances, but I have not yet. But playing the Masters last year and being low am there, I think that would be the ultimate for me.
Okay.
Hey, Victor, we've touched on this. You're a notoriously straight driver. What is the record amount of fairways that you've ever hit in a row?
I really don't know. The thing is, though, the fairway hits, it's like it's kind of a deceiving stat sometimes because a lot of these courses, like there are a lot of places where the design is not really meant to be, you're not meant to hit driver on certain holes, but that's not always kind of where I'm aiming at. I'm just trying to squeeze it as far up there. If it's in the rough, it's fine because most of the other guys are hitting irons off the tee or 3-woods.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I look at, the fairway stats where I'm playing. One good example is Shadow Creek, where we had a tour event over the summer or the fall. And that course it's kind of janky a little bit in spots, and you're going to hit a lot of drivers and the ball is just going to roll into the rough a lot of different places. So you can't, like, you hit a good drive, but it's in the rough and it looks bad on the stats after. But so I don't really know, but I have definitely had 14 out of 14 fairway hits before.
Yeah, I would have guessed so. But coach has a stat for you that you should try to break this year if you truly want to become a complete player.
Mikkel's roommate at Baylor was Kyle Jones, who's playing on the Korn Ferry Tour right now.
Yeah,
we played a 72 hole of the Big 12 championship at Southern Hills in 2015, and Kyle hit 46 fairways in a row at Southern Hills. You've played there, 46 in a row, and not just ran through the fairway and was 1 inch into the rough. He hit 46 in a row. That's crazy.
They were undisputable in the fairway.
In the fairway, and we had one of our
players incredible
walking along as a substitute, and we were on the very last hole, 72nd hole. It's number 18 at Southern Hills.
Yeah.
He walks up to me, he says, "Coach, do you realize Kyle has hit 45 fairways in a row? Are you going to tell him?" And I said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would I tell him now?" And he hit the 18th fairway, 46. All right, so your favorite pro athlete of all times?
Just have to. I don't watch a whole lot of other sports, and obviously growing up in kind of the Tiger era, have to be Tiger Woods.
Good
Just
answer.
Watching him dominate, it's hard to beat.
Favorite college tournament, Victor?
Ooh, y'all played that one. I think you guys went to Cabo, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's that's the sweetest tournament of them all. It used to be Hawaii, and then because obviously we stay there for a week and we play a bunch of other courses, but just going to Cabo, the weather is amazing, and we would stay at a donor's house of
Chuck Watson.
Chuck Watson, yep, booster of Oklahoma State. He's a great guy, and it's right by the ocean. It's just you just can't beat it. And I think the few times that we played there, we won the tournament. We all played pretty well, so it was a great week.
Yeah, we finished second to you that year. That one of those years you won. I remember that. But how many is the most breakfast tacos you've eaten on that range tee before?
Oh, I had to cut myself off with like 6 or something. My stomach started to hurt, and I realized I actually had to play some golf later that day. But yeah, those tacos are amazing.
Yep, that is definitely one of my favorite tournaments as well. Okay, last question. Your dream foursome, you and 3 other golfers. Who are they going to be? It could be dead or alive, anybody. 3 golfers you want to play with.
So I've yet to play with Tiger, so I'd have to put Tiger up there. To be, I don't know if it sounds bad, but like I've always kind of been pretty starstruck because I've watched so much golf growing up. But as soon as I kind of turned pro and I started competing against the guys out here, I really don't regard guys like that in the same way. You know, they're just not that exciting as it looks on TV. So for that matter, I'd have to probably pick someone, you know, that is not alive today. Probably Ben Hogan, I'd say. It'd be cool to kind of watch him play and see how he was swinging it. And then maybe a Jack Nicklaus. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Well, my two favorite players are Ben Hogan and Jack Nicklaus. You did well there.
Okay.
And I still think Tiger is better than those two put together. That's how great I think Tiger was.
Wow.
You picked a perfect group right there. Well, Victor, again,
definitely wouldn't be great for my self-esteem in that foursome, but it's all right. I could sit back and watch the Stripe show.
well, we might look back 15 years from now and you might be better than all those guys. So why not?
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on to the podcast today, Better Than I Found It. And Mikkel, I'll let you say goodbye to him in your native language.
Tusen takk for at du var med, Viktor. Vi er stolte av deg. Heia Norge.
Takk, Mikkel. Takk. Yeah, thank you, Coach. Thanks for having me on, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and best of luck with your guys' year.
Have a great Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.